Take a look at this slide. It's pretty easy to tell that these are all students who go to that school. Why? Because they are wearing the school uniform. Now take a look at this next slide. It's pretty easy to tell that one of the people here doesn't belong. Why? Because they're not wearing the uniform. They're an adult. It's very easy to tell that she's not like the other students. Very quickly. Because now take a look at this next slide. Here, the students aren't wearing a uniform. And even though the teacher is still the same, at a glance, it's harder to tell who's meant to be there and who isn't. Because they're not wearing uniform, they all blend in together, and you have to look quite closely in order to determine who's meant to be there and who isn't. Now, this is a scenario that teachers face every day, looking out at schoolyards. Sometimes it can be difficult to tell who the students are and who aren't. What school uniforms do is they allow teachers to, at a glance, very quickly determine who's meant to be in the playground and who isn't. Because the ones that are meant to be there are wearing uniform, and the ones who aren't. School uniforms also help keep students safe when they're on a school trip or an excursion. This is because uniforms make them easily identifiable. For example, take a look at this slide. You can very easily see who the school students are and who aren't because the school students are wearing school uniform. Compare that, though, to this slide where the students aren't wearing a school uniform, and it becomes much harder to tell quickly who's a student and who isn't. Sure, you can probably tell who's a child by their size and what they look like, but when you're trying to do it quickly, it can be very difficult to tell which ones are students and which ones are not. For teachers, it's vitally important that they are easily able to keep track of their students. If their students just blend in with the general public, it can be very difficult to keep them safe. That's why school uniforms are so important in this context, because they allow teachers to identify their students quickly and easily. Another good argument for school uniforms is that they prevent bullying and stop students from being easily able to identify those whose parents are wealthy and those who are not. Kids can be cruel, and they can pick on others for just about any point of difference. The last thing kids from lower socioeconomic backgrounds need is to be identified and bullied because they're poor. Without school uniforms, this is exactly what can happen. The poorer kids can get picked on because their clothes aren't as expensive or as fashionable as their peers. What school uniforms do is they level the playing field and make it so everyone is even, at least when it comes to clothes. They make it so it doesn't matter who can afford the latest shoes and who can't, because everyone has to wear uniform-compliant shoes. Uniforms don't stop bullying, but they do make it that much easier for kids from poorer families to avoid being identified and bullied because of their socioeconomic status. Another good argument for school uniforms is that they save parents money. Clothes can be expensive, especially when parents feel pressured to always buy their children the latest and greatest fashionable clothes. When a school has a school uniform, however, parents only need to buy 2 or 3 sets of clothes for the entire school semester, rather than needing to buy 5 different outfits for each week. What's more, school uniforms are made to be durable, meaning that unlike regular clothes, they're designed to survive the rough and tumble of the playground. In this way, school uniforms can save parents a bucket load of money, because instead of having to buy so many different clothes for each school term, they only need to buy 2 or 3 sets of uniforms. Another good argument for school uniforms is that they stop clothes from becoming a distraction. When kids are allowed to wear whatever they want, often they can become so preoccupied with what they look like and what others are thinking of them that they stop focusing on their studies. What uniforms do is they remove this distraction entirely. Kids don't need to worry about what their peers are thinking of their clothes because everyone's wearing the same thing. We don't want our kids to be focusing on what they're going to wear to school the next day. We want them to be focusing on what they're learning, and school uniforms help to achieve that. The final argument for school uniforms is that they create a shared sense of identity. When a group of people want to achieve something together, it's important they feel like they belong and have a shared sense of purpose. A uniform is one way to achieve this, which is why uniforms are used by armies and sport teams alike. Because people work harder and put in more if they feel like they're a part of something bigger than themselves. And school kids are no different. Uniforms can make them feel like they belong, make them more likely to help their peers and less likely to bully one another. They create a shared sense of identity, which kids can take pride in and motivate them to achieve their goals.